Hello, we are in Module 3 of the CHS Training for Quality and Accountability focal points. We're looking at what you need to know on each commitment of the core humanitarian standard in order to support your organisation's implementation of these commitments. In this presentation, we're going to look at Commitment 6. Commitment 6 of the core humanitarian standard states that communities and people affected by crisis receive coordinated, complementary assistance. The quality criterion requires that humanitarian response is coordinated and complementary. This commitment is important because effective and timely humanitarian response requires collective action. Coordination mechanisms, such as the cluster system, help establish a clear division of labour, assign responsibility, and help to identify gaps. Coordination is also important to help prevent duplication of effort and to maximise the use of resources. There are 4 key actions for Commitment 6, and 2 are accompanied by a PSEAH requirement, that's prevention of sexual exploitation, abuse and harassment. Key Action 6.1 is to identify the roles, responsibilities, capacities and interests of different stakeholders. The PSEAH requirement to fulfill this indicator is as follows. The roles, responsibilities and capacities of partner and other stakeholders to prevent SEAH needs to be identified. The guiding questions to consider are around due diligence or partner capacity assessment processes that assess your partner's PSEAH systems and capacity. Other guiding questions to consider are: firstly, how does your organisation and/or partner organisations ensure SEAH mandatory reporting obligations? And secondly, how your organisation or partner organisations understand the legal and contextual implications and risks for all countries of operation. Key Action 6.2 requires humanitarian response to complement that of national and local authorities and other humanitarian organisations. Key Action 6.3. Participate in relevant coordination bodies and collaborate with others in order to minimize demands on communities and maximize the coverage and service provisions of the wider humanitarian effort. Key Action 6.4. Share necessary information with partners, coordination groups, and other relevant actors through appropriate communication channels. Remember, when you approach this indicator, there are 3 levels to share necessary information with: partners, coordination groups, and other relevant actors. There is also a PSEAH requirement to fulfill this indicator, in that information relating to PSEAH needs to be shared with those partners, coordination groups, and other relevant actors. The guiding questions for this PSEAH requirement include: firstly, how your organisation ensures coordination and sharing of information on PSEAH with partners, coordination groups, and other actors. Secondly, whether you coordinate in joint screening and field-level joint reporting mechanisms regarding PSEAH. And finally, whether your organisation participates in interagency SEAH misconduct data sharing. The types of actions that demonstrate whether your staff are meeting the key action indicators of Commitment 6 include: 1. Identifying capacities and interests in stakeholder mapping and capacity analysis. Use these in global and/or country strategies, response plans, situation reports, and analysis. 2. Evidence of coordination group membership and representation minutes. Agreements with local authorities also demonstrate the key actions are being taken. 3. Evaluation, policy, procedures, and reports will help identify if coordination is effective in terms of duplication of efforts and/or resources. 4. Joint assessments, consultations, evaluations, and joint community-based complaint mechanisms can be highly effective ways of working with others in a humanitarian response. 5. Information sharing and dissemination plans. Information materials, for example, publication, presentations, and meeting minutes, as well as plans and proposals with partners, are all ways you can confirm the degree to which your organization is delivering coordinated and complementary assistance. Take a moment to consider the items on this slide. Do your teams carry out these processes in order to ensure that humanitarian response is coordinated and complementary? If not, there might be examples on this slide that become part of your CHS implementation or improvement plan. Take a moment now to write them down. There are 2 organisational responsibilities for Commitment 6, and both are accompanied by a PSEAH requirement. Indicator 6.5 requires that policies and strategies include a clear commitment to coordination and collaboration with others, including national and local authorities, without compromising humanitarian principles. You can see that there are 2 parts to this. Firstly, policies and strategies need to include a clear commitment to coordination and collaboration with others, including national and local authorities, as well as having policies which ensure that humanitarian principles are not compromised when coordinating and collaborating with others. Indicator 6.6 expects that work with partners is governed by clear and consistent agreements that respects each partner's mandate, obligations, and independence, and recognizes their respective constraints and commitments. Again, you need to read the indicator carefully. It is asking for both clear and consistent agreements that respect each partner's mandate, obligation, and independence, and clear and consistent agreements that recognize partners' respective constraints and commitments. The PSEAH requirement to fulfill this indicator is that the organization needs to have a clear and consistent agreement with its partners, specifically addressing PSEAH obligations. The verification framework guiding questions ask how your organization addresses PSEAH obligations in written agreement with partners, and how partners' compliance with PSEAH obligations is monitored. Take a moment to read this slide, which gives you a list of examples of organizational responsibilities for Commitment 6. As with the other commitments we've looked at, the success in fulfilling the requirements of Commitment 6 will in part be determined by the culture of your organization and the expectations surrounding coordination. If your organization works through partners, organizational policies and guidance should encourage a willingness and openness to engage and learn from others, as well as setting the expectations for respectful, effective, and accountable partnerships. Communities are asked one question under Commitment 6. The question they are asked is, do you see evidence that aid agencies and workers work together to improve the services they provide? This has been an overview of Commitment 6 of the CHS, looking at what is required for implementation. Together, we've looked at the key actions, organisational responsibilities, what particular PSEAH requirements are attached to that commitment, as well as questions you can ask communities to verify their perception on how your organisation implements this commitment.